Welcome in to another new AMP podcast. I'm your host, Ben Dubose, and I'm the news editor for the AMP Publications team. In that role with the Association for Materials Protection and Performance, of course known as AMP for short, I create content for both Materials Performance Magazine and Coatings Pro Magazine. For today's podcast, in something of an in-house episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by my good friend, Rebecca Bickham. Rebecca, if you don't already know, is basically the face of Materials Performance, or MP, as editor-in-chief of the magazine. In that capacity, she's going to help me today with talking about the 2025 MP Corrosion Innovation of the Year Awards program, for which nominations are currently being accepted. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. I've been looking forward to it, Ben.
Yeah, same here. So, first things first, I'll start with a little bit of background on the magazine. Materials Performance is known as the world's largest circulation magazine that is exclusively dedicated to corrosion prevention and control. Published monthly by AMP and distributed to nearly 40,000 readers, MP covers the latest methods of corrosion control used in industries and infrastructure worldwide. And then when you factor in our website, materialsperformance.com, that readership figure can go up exponentially. Now, as far as the awards program, the official website can be accessed at amp.org/MP Innovation Awards. And while there, you can find the official nomination form, a look at the past winners, and answers to many frequently asked questions, or FAQs. We'll expand more on some of those in today's podcast, but that FAQs page on the website is a good reference point if you need a concise summary. So as far as today, let's start with the basics. Rebecca, how did this program initially come to be, and what is its general purpose for the industry?
So the MP Awards program started back in 2012, so it's been around for more than a decade now. And the primary goal in developing the awards program was to give the corrosion community the chance to highlight all their groundbreaking work that we've been seeing throughout the years. So we thought this was a great way to go about it. We're holding the awards program every other year, so it's a biannual program. And the 8th awards presentation is going to take place at the 2025 AMP Annual Conference and Expo, which will be in Nashville, Tennessee next April. So an easy way to kind of remember the process is that the nominations are taken in the even years, and then the formal announcement and the presentation is made at the conference, which is the odd year. The winners are announced by the AMP president, and they are awarded large trophies. The trophies can be displayed at their booth in the exhibit hall at conference. And then we also record the ceremony live and have a video feed that we stream. And then there's also an archived version that we put on social media outlets, both AMP and MP, and then we post to the websites as well. And then after conference, the winners are able to take their trophies home, of course. They can take them back to their office or wherever it is that they think the trophy would have the most value. And the idea behind that is we want to celebrate and showcase the winners and their hard work and dedication to the corrosion community. And then those trophies are kind of a symbolic way to display that to their potential clients or customers. And then we have a few other perks as well to being a winner. Each winning innovation gets profiled on either a future print issue of Materials Performance or on the materialsperformance.com website. And so we offer the winners the chance to also come on the podcast and discuss their winning innovation with our listeners. And finally, I'll add that some of the winning innovations end up getting discussed as technical presentation in the following year's AMP annual conference. So as far as the 2025 awards, our nomination period started on April 1st of this year, and it's open until September 15th, which is coming up quickly. From there, the panel of corrosion experts judge those nominations, and they select up to 10 winners. It's a very competitive process because in most years or award cycles, I should say, we've had about 50 nominations. So when you take that into consideration, narrowing it down from 10 to 50 is not an easy task. And I think it really speaks to just how accomplished these winners are because the competition is very high. The judging process entails 2 rounds, and the panel of judges is represented by all areas of materials protection and corrosion control, including input from the NP technical editor.
And I'll also note, as someone that's something of a staff liaison to that judging panel, that after the first round of judging, those innovations that are deemed to have passed the initial qualification test, those are considered finalists, and then those are subsequently posted to the awards website. So even for nominees who don't ultimately receive one of the final awards, there is still potentially some value from getting their nomination posted on the website and branded as a finalist. Because really, when you think about this program at a high level, what we're trying to do is provide some independent third-party recognition of what some of the most promising new technologies are within this industry. There's just so many things that are being developed that without programs like this, it can oftentimes be difficult to distinguish between them. So the idea is that we can bring in a panel of expert judges from many different aspects of the industry. Think coatings and linings, cathodic protection, chemical treatment, material selection and design, modeling and risk assessment, etc., and then have them grade each innovation. And we do put a priority at having both insiders and outsiders, so to speak, grade each innovation. So, for example, if someone is submitting a cathodic protection innovation, their nomination form will be looked at by both someone with specialized CP knowledge, but also someone from another field within the industry. The idea there is that a winning innovation should have appeal on multiple levels, both in terms of having appropriate technical specifics, while also making its purpose more easily understood at a layman's level, or at least a layman's level in the context of our broader industry. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the nomination process, which is underway now. Rebecca, what are the general qualifications for a product to be considered a corrosion innovation and thus eligible for these awards?
That's a great question. So first of all, I'd like to say that the innovation should have been in some sort of development either on or after January 1st, 2020. This date does change with each subsequent awards program, but for this upcoming one, the 2025 awards, the date is January 1st, 2020. The innovation must be feasible, and then it must show potential for either a significant or positive effect on corrosion control in some way. And it must be related to either coatings and linings, materials, design, equipment, testing, monitoring, modeling, or risk assessment, cathodic protection, chemical treatment, or it can be anything else that directly relates to corrosion prevention and mitigation.
Yeah, and I'll note that January 2020 cutoff, that's how we keep it timely. We want this to be within the last few years. So that's why the 2025 cycle will be different than the ones you may have seen or heard in 2023 or 2021. That's the reason for the date moving, is that we want to make sure we're recognizing what's really been happening on the ground in recent years and that we're truly up to date on things that are timely and really groundbreaking in this industry. That's why it's the Corrosion Innovation of the Year awards, both in terms of innovation and of the year. It's something that's very recent and being actively developed within our industry over the last few years. Anyway, from there, going beyond the specific topic, what are the other nomination guidelines? What are the eligibility requirements for the person submitting?
So for our program, we allow individuals, companies, organizations, and even governments from all around the world to submit nominations. And then it's also completely acceptable to self-nominate, and we allow people to submit even more than one nomination. To address one common question that we get, we do allow people to submit a previous nomination from a past awards program, but not if that nomination actually won an MP award. So in other words, if someone was a finalist who did not win, they can submit again, but an actual awards winner cannot. Unlike some other awards contests, there's no cost involved in our program. You can just fill out the nomination form on the AMP Awards website and submit it electronically. We have both a form that you can fill out on the website and a Word form that you can actually download and then fill it out and email it in the old-fashioned way. So either way is acceptable.
I'll also note that once submitted, those nominations are sent immediately to myself and Carrie Cole, the editor of MP, and then we send those to the judging panel once their work begins later this year. So in the meantime, if you've got any direct questions about the process, you can reach out to either myself or Carrie directly, since we're the intermediaries between the staff and the judging panel. The format for our emails at AMP is firstname.lastname@ampp.org. Now, as far as the actual judges, we're not going to specifically identify who they are, and I hope the reasons for that are understandable. We just don't want people reaching out directly to the panel because at some point you can run into a bias issue. We don't want anyone asking for personal favors. We want there to be a separation so that there can be a truly objective judging criteria and one that's detached from the nominees themselves. The specific identities are kept confidential, bottom line, to preserve the integrity and the neutrality of the awards program as a whole. But what we can say is that they do represent the entire ecosystem of materials protection and corrosion control. So when you look at those various categories that we have within the awards, we bring in people with expertise in each of those individual fields. That's how we try to make the program as broad as we can to represent the entire industry. I'll also note that in terms of our actual winners, at the end of this process, those are not necessarily limited by category. For example, it's not that you're going to only have one coatings and linings winner, one cathodic protection, and so on and so forth. All of these entries are numerically scored, and the highest, based on that numerical scoring in multiple rounds, will win the awards. And so in a given year, if we happen to have a bunch of really strong innovations within, hypothetically, cathodic protection, then we can have 3 or 4 winners within CP. We want to make sure we have the best innovations within our industry, period, without necessarily being biased to any one specific field to try and force a round peg into a square hole, if you will, or an analogy like that. Because at the end of this process, when we're tallying up these scores in all these various categories, the bottom line is that we want to feel confident that those 10 top scores are indeed the best technical innovations within that award cycle. And so that's what we're going for, regardless of whether it's materials design, CP, coatings and linings, instrumentation, whatever the field may be. We want the best 10 technological developments and innovations, and so that's what we think we're able to do with the way we've set up this program. We're not putting up any artificial barriers. But as far as what the judging panel is looking for, the main thing I would stress is practicality. There's a lot of brilliant people within this community, and the technologies every single year that come out are tremendous. What I've seen in my years of working with our judges, and I've been involved with this from the 2017 award cycle until today, these are people that are very accomplished within their fields. They're professionals who know this industry very well. Many are still actively working within it. And so beyond just the technical details, they also want to hear about the practicality of each innovation. Can you explain the technology and how it fits within the broader corrosion control field? Can you show evidence of how, in a laboratory setting or perhaps in the field, that it's actually been useful? Because ultimately, it's not just about the technology itself or the potential. The winners typically have an ability to communicate not just that, but also show evidence of its practicality. So in terms of people submitting for the 2025 Corrosion Innovation of the Year Awards, think in terms of questions like these. Can you show, as many of our winners have in the past, evidence in the lab or in the field? Can you explain how this fits within corrosion control and materials protection in 2024 and beyond? Because when we're talking about this upcoming 2025 award cycle, we're really talking about technologies that could very well shape the rest of this decade for our industry. So with that as the general guidance, I'll turn things back over to you, Rebecca. What are some of the nomination specifics and the legalese, if you will?
Absolutely. So each nomination form must be completed and submitted, and the deadline is Sunday, September 15th, 2024. And this nomination form will ask you for a full description of your innovation. And we want that description to include as much information as needed for the innovation and the process used for developing and implementing the innovation, in addition to an evaluation of the results and criteria used to kind of determine what its success is. And so there's a summary portion, and that should be approximately 300 words or less, and you're allowed to include one photo with that. And then the full description section should be limited to no more than 10 pages. And again, on the form, participants should select the category that they feel best meets or best fits, I should say, the innovation. And so those categories, again, are coatings and linings, cathodic protection, materials, design, chemical treatment, instrumentation, testing, modeling or risk assessment, and then other. And the entries that don't meet the eligibility criteria will be disqualified. And the ones that are disqualified are not posted as finalists on our awards website. So nominations submitted after the deadline also may not be accepted.
And so relative to past cycles, I know for our longtime submitters, that September 15th date might sound a little early in the calendar. And in fact, it's only about a month away from when we're sending out this podcast. So we hope that as you're listening, you're going to be putting together your nominations in the very near future. Now, we know, of course, the majority of nominations do come in towards the deadline because everything is deadline driven. So the reason that we moved that deadline up a bit, by having it in September, it helps with regards to the judging panel and specifically with recruiting the best judges that we can. Because ultimately, the quality of the judges is strongly correlated with the quality of the program. And as an industry, we should want this awards program to do well because it recognizes the best technologies and the best developments within corrosion control. So let's say hypothetically that we had the deadline later in the year, closer to the holidays starting in late November. When you're going into that period, a lot of people have so many other responsibilities going on. You've got your normal job, but also activities with family, with friends, all sorts of responsibilities that can make it pretty difficult to do something extra like judging these innovations around that time of year. And then, as we all know, when you get back from the holidays in January, it's just a rush period of catching up on all those emails, all those to-do list items that we've sort of put off a little bit while enjoying the holidays and things outside of work. So when you look at this awards program and specifically the timetable with regards to the announcement, the ceremony, the presentation at the AMP annual conference, you really need to have things finalized at least a couple of months before conference. And next year, again, it's not until April annual conference. We're doing it in Nashville, so we're giving a few more weeks to let things warm up. But the bottom line is that the awards program really needs to be ready a couple of months before that because we've got to get the trophies printed out. We've got to plan out the logistics of the ceremony. We've got to ship things. There's so much logistics, so much planning that goes into it. And so in order to do that, we need to have the judging cycle as early as possible so that internally we know who the winners are as early as possible and can start working on the logistics to make everything happen on site in Nashville. And keep in mind, as far as the judging, there's multiple rounds that go into it. And so that does take a lot of time for our panel to go through each innovation and give each nominee the time and attention and consideration that they deserve. And so if we're asking those judges, and remember, these are very busy and accomplished people, if we're asking them right around the holidays to drop everything and get it back to us within a couple of weeks for multiple rounds of judging, that's probably going to limit our ability to get the best judges because it's just not realistic to expect most people to be taken away from their normal jobs as well as their families or other responsibilities, things going on around that time of year. So the bottom line, the earlier the nominations are in, the better chance we have to recruit the best judges because they're going to have more time to properly judge and rate all these submissions. Then at the end of the day, we're confident that at that point, we've got the best innovations in the industry, and then this MP Corrosion Innovation of the Year Awards program is truly reflective of the best developments in that nominating cycle again, we all benefit when this program represents the corrosion industry in the best light. Rebecca, as far as the judges, again, we're not going to identify who they are, but what are the criteria that they're going to be judging by? How are the awards recipients actually selected?
Right. So each innovation, as we've mentioned, is rated using a numerical scoring system. And then the highest rated innovations are the ones that ultimately go on to receive the awards. So the big questions that we ask are, first, does this description provided adequately describe the innovation? So in other words, how it works, what is its purpose, and what makes it innovative? And then second, does the innovation improve an existing corrosion control solution, or does it provide a new solution where none previously existed? Next, has the nominator sufficiently demonstrated that the innovation works as described, either by providing laboratory results or field testing results? Next, can the innovation be incorporated into existing corrosion prevention and control activities? And then finally, does the innovation benefit the corrosion control community?
All right, that's pretty comprehensive. Again, we want it to be a blend of both the specifics. That's where you get into the questions of demonstrations, how it incorporates, does it improve existing solutions, but also the practicality. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, is not just show the benefit or potential benefit, but also can you explain how this benefits the overall industry? What's the purpose? What makes it innovative? Just some basic questions, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the technology. If you want an innovation to be successful, you also need to make the appeal to the market for why it's needed and how it's going to upgrade what's in place today. And so that's why with our criteria, we want to make sure that we're representing both the nitty-gritty, the technical specifics, but also some of the more basic layman's questions, because at the end of the day, both are important when it comes to making the pitch to the industry and getting a new technology embraced on a larger scale. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with these questions today and sort of running through the criteria for the awards program. So hopefully that's beneficial to our listeners and those considering making a nomination for the 2025 cycle. Rebecca, before we wrap up, what's the fine print? And just as a general disclaimer, what's the background information that people should know going into this nomination process?
Yeah, we've definitely got some of that. So starting off, MP reserves the right to disqualify any nomination which is frivolous, not feasible, incomplete, illegible, or fails to meet all the nomination requirements. So the magazine is under no obligation to publish or exhibit any entry, and the judging panel's decisions are final. ANP is not responsible for any incorrect or inaccurate information, whether caused by awards program participants or in any of the equipment or programming that is associated with the awards program. In consideration of MP agreeing to consider their nomination, each participant grants MP and AMP a royalty-free license to copy, edit, display, publish, and make available their nomination description and photos. This license applies to any format in connection with the awards or the promotion of them. By submitting a nomination, participants confirm that they have the right to nominate and that they have obtained all necessary consents, permissions, and authorizations. It also confirms that the entry does not infringe on any third-party rights. The awards recipients will be contacted by email in early 2025, and the winners are publicly announced and honored at the AMP Annual Conference next April in Nashville. And all top innovations will also be announced and recognized in the MP magazine. Finally, MP is not responsible for any costs associated with attending the award ceremony or shipping or transportation of the trophies after they've been presented. There's a few more disclaimers, but I think you get the idea. It's all available in the fine print at www.amp.org/MP Innovations.
/MP Innovation Awards. And yeah, you just hit up that FAQ page on the website, and that's where you can find those disclaimers, but also more if you want to get really nitty gritty as far as the background of this process, what making a nomination entails and ultimately what the next few months look like as we run through the various phases of this program leading up to the official announcement next April. Anyway, if you have questions beyond what's on the FAQs page or what Rebecca and I have discussed today, feel free to email us with those follow-up questions at mpinnovationawards@amp.org. Bottom line, though, is that a lot of that information is already available online, either at materialsperformance.com or at that awards website, amp.org/MP Innovation Awards. Rebecca, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today and helping walk our listeners through the process.
Happy to, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. And with that, we'll bring this episode to a close. On behalf of Rebecca Bickham, Editor-in-Chief of MP, I'm Ben Dubose, News Editor with AMP Publications. And if you want more resources from AMP or to learn more about the association, just visit the flagship homepage at www.amp.org. That's AMPP, short for the Association for Materials Protection and Performance. With that, we'll adjourn for today. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another new episode.